Chapter 14 Triad 20th day of the second month, 700th year. Trigatu finally arrived at the hills, but for him it felt like no time at all. His thoughts were consumed with the miraculous visit and a burning desire to use his gift. He went straight to the mouth of the canyon by the water source and found some sticks. His hands shook and he grinned with excitement as he gathered them together. With the pile made, he sat staring at them, his face screwing up. How exactly do I do this? Focus on the object you wish to burn, he recalled. He concentrated on the sticks and wished fire to appear. Nothing happened. He began to sweat and his brow creased even more. Burn, 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 he repeated, while staring intensely at the sticks. Still nothing happened. As he was about to give up, he suddenly felt the same heat sensation when the messenger gave him the gift. It started in his heart again, flowed through his body like his blood, and finally rushed up his neck and into his head. His mind became hot, and he desperately tried to focus all the energy on the sticks. It was too much. He felt like his head would burst into consuming flames. As he willed a last attempt to burn the sticks, he felt the heat leave as if through his eyes. A small flame appeared on one of the sticks, and smoke began to rise. The others then caught fire. The heat in Trigatu's mind had vanished, but a wave of dizziness and exhaustion gripped him as sweat poured down his face. He wished the world would stop moving, and he shut his eyes. His balance was gone, and the only thing he could do was topple sideways to rest. As he lay there on the ground, a small smile crept across his face. He had done it. He had set fire to something with his thoughts. Trigatu lay still for a while, and wished he could create more fire. He had no energy. This was frustrating, but he had no choice. The only way to improve was to sleep, eat, and drink as much as possible, then exercise the gift like the messenger had said. He let the exhaustion take him, and fell asleep. When he woke, he was relieved that he could move again. He ate and drank, then went for a quick hunt to get more food. The process then began again, and this went on for several days. 24th day of the second month, 700th year. After 4 days, it was ever so slightly easier to use the gift. Trigatu still had to eat and drink a lot, and realized he must be eating enough to sustain 2 people. The whole experience, it filled him with excitement, but he still found it very difficult. All he wanted was to be able to set anything on fire, like the dragon had. It wasn't to be, and the process continued, testing his patience every time. When he wasn't asleep, he lay still for hours, often thinking about how people would respect his gift and be shocked by the change in his stature. It was also filled with questions and hopes. How will Freta react? How will my friends and family react? I will help the people follow the Book of Law better and keep my promises to my father and the Creator. Trigatu stayed for another week, determined to be good at using the gift. After much thought, he also decided to keep the limitations a secret. People follow me because I'm strong. Having limitations makes me look weak. People need to be able to have faith in my strength and ability to help them. I have to use the gift to be an example. If people doubt me, then they won't follow me or trust me. I'll only show them my strength. It's the best way. 6th of the 3rd, 6th day of the 3rd month, 700th year. Trigatu walked through the nation's fields, absorbing the curious looks and expressions of amazement. He was excited to tell people about the gift, but most of all he couldn't wait to show Freta, Honrus, the Honora, and his family. Trigatu's path took him close to Eunalis' favourite tree, the one that stood alone. There were 2 peculiar people by the tree. He decided to investigate. One had silver hair, and the other's was white and long. As he got closer, walking through the white flowers, he saw who they were. It was Eunalis and Phenon. From the changes in their appearance, he knew what had happened, and his heart sank slightly with the revelation. Taking a deep breath, he tried to push the feelings down and force a smile. Phenon noticed him and ran up to him. "Wow, you're huge," he said quickly, looking Trigatu up and down. The moment of impressed shock passed, and Phenon gave him a warm embrace, his head barely reaching Trigatu's chest. He released Trigatu and spoke very formally, his words contradicting the action of bouncing up and down on his feet with excitement. "My title is Finon." As he said this, Dragatu got a better look at Finon and returned the welcome. "As you can guess, mine is Dragatu. I see you have a gift too. What's happened to your hair? It's silver. Look at your eyes. Your irises are orange." Finon's face beamed. "Watch this," he said. He shook his head, and in the sunlight each hair burst into a vast spectrum of orange. A faint memory of one of the many creatures appeared in Dragatu's mind. "Incredible. It's wonderful, isn't it? We have so much to talk about. Come on." Finon grabbed Dragatu's arm with excitement, but was unable to move him until Dragatu followed. As he walked to where Unitas sat under the tree, Dragatu thought about Finon's orange eyes. It reminded him of how the messengers were 4 different colors. He wondered if his eyes were different, and realized he hadn't checked his facial appearance. Dragatu thought about asking Finon if his own eyes were a different color, but they reached Unitas, and he decided to ask later. He asked a more pressing question instead. "What gifts do you both have?" Unitas had his back to Dragatu, facing the tree, but answered his question with a greeting. "Hello, Dragatu." There was a pause, and Dragatu realized he had to continue the formality. "Hello, Unitas," he repeated to his brother's back. "We have been greatly blessed to receive our gifts," Unitas continued, not moving from his seated position. "It is best if we recount what happened one at a time. The messengers that came to Finon and I'm assuming you, told us we could speak of these things to each other. I'm happy this is the case. Finon and I know each other's story, but I suggest Finon tells you his encounter first. I think he'll explode with excitement if he does not." Finon had bounced on his toes the whole time and grinned innocently to Dragatu as Unitas stopped talking. "Well, it happened, 19 days ago," he began. Dragatu suddenly realized that people would know about the messenger. He was disappointed again. He wanted to tell the people. Another thought crept in. How am I to lead if my brothers have gifts too? Surely they're not going to lead as well. He quickly shook off the thoughts and listened. "I was out with some of the children, and we were having such a fun time laughing and playing. We were playing between the houses and along the streets over there." He pointed across the many fields towards the improved, but still poorer part of the nation in the distance. "I heard the voice of a woman calling my name, and I looked around. As I turned, I saw a small girl with long black hair that covered her face at the end of a row of houses. She was crying, so I walked towards her to see if she was okay. The children told me I should stay with them and have fun. The girl was wearing sackcloth, and she was very muddy. I left them and walked towards the girl. She turned and started walking away, still crying. I followed her, and when I turned the corner, I saw her running away. I shouted after her, asking if she was okay. She stopped, turned to face me, and looked up, her face still covered by the hair. I asked why she was upset. She said nothing, turned towards another path, and pointed as if I should follow her. She began to walk, and I followed. I followed her out of the street to an open field of dry, discolored grass. She sat on a rock and continued to cry. I walked to the rock and sat down next to her, asking what was wrong and if I could help her. She didn't answer and kept crying. I noticed that despite her ragged appearance, she had a bracelet that looked very valuable. It was made out of a dark yellow metal that glowed in the sun, and it had 7 stones embedded in it. They were blue, purple, yellow, white, red, green, and orange. I decided to try and cheer her up, so I asked if she had ever seen anyone juggle. She shook her head and looked at me, a few tears still running down her face. As she looked up, her hair was brushed away by the wind. I gasped as I looked into her eyes. She had amazing eyes. They were 4 beautiful colors. They were orange, red, green, and blue. It took me by surprise. She saw my shock, looked back at the floor, and began to sob. As the shock faded, I decided to pick up 3 medium-sized stones from the ground and began to juggle. She looked at me again, a smile appearing on her face. I kept juggling, then dropped one. She let out a little giggle, and I smiled back. Once again, she looked down at the ground, looking very sad. I asked her what was wrong again, and said I would try to help if she would let me. She looked at me and held my gaze with such intensity. I couldn't help but return her gaze and looked at those unique eyes. Finally, she looked away. After a moment of silence, I asked if she knew any jokes. Again, she shook her head and looked down, her hair covering her face as before. I told her a joke, and it got another little giggle. I told her another, and this time she laughed loudly. I smiled softly, and she looked up at me. A smile crept across her face. Then she finally spoke, but it wasn't the woman's voice I had heard before. "Thank you," she said in a little sweet voice. "I am a messenger from the Creator. Your kindness and patience are special, Phenon. They are qualities that could help you be a great leader. Sit beside me." I did, and told her I didn't want to be a leader. I said you and Eunyalus were more suited to be dealing with leadership. She said this was one of the reasons I could be a leader, as humility was important. She told me I was to get a gift to help me lead, and the gift I got would be my choice. She explained many things to me, and told me I would see many of the creations made. I would have to pick one that had the characteristics I felt would help the people the most. After this talk, she stood up, and as I sat on the rock, she put her hands on my eyes, one little hand over each eye. When her hands touched my eyes, there was a flash of light, bright like the sun, and I was shown so many wonderful and beautiful things. I saw animals and creatures I could never have dreamed of. Some looked funny, and some very scary. The one I chose was from a world with many mountains that reached high into the sky. The people were fighting over a creature that lived in the very top of the mountains. This creature was like a bird. It had silver feathers when it was in the shade, but once it was in the sunlight, the feathers burst into 100 different shades of orange, like my hair now. He grinned to Dragatu. The bird was so beautiful, with all the different kinds of orange shimmering in the sun. "Do you remember it?" Dragatu nodded. "A little bit, but a reminder would help." "It sang the loveliest songs," Phenon explained. Anyone who was hurt could touch the bird, and they would be healed. The people used the birds to heal diseases and physical infirmities. Some of the people wanted to capture the bird for their healing ability, and this is why the people were fighting. They even used its strong metal-like feathers as clothing when they fought. I saw how special the bird was, as it could heal people. I thought it would be a wonderful way to help our people. Once I had seen all the worlds, I told the messenger I had fallen in love with this creation. She said this creature was the phoenix. She told me I had the gift of the breath of life, and that when I touched people, I could heal almost any disease or wound. She said there was a consequence, though. The healing would give me the same relative pain the person was going through. She also said I would live a very long life. I would live many generations before I died. She told me that the family line of my firstborn would inherit this gift when I died, and it would be the firstborn of that line, and they would inherit it when they were 18. She then smiled sweetly and asked if I was sure this was the gift I wanted. I said yes. She put her hands on the side of my head, and there was another flash of light, temporarily blinding my vision with whiteness. At that moment, I felt my lungs expand, and they kept expanding as if they were going to burst. All of a sudden, they deflated, and my whole body felt light. The feeling rose to my head and gathered in it. I had to open my mouth, and all the air I felt inside me rushed out in the longest exhale I had ever had. My vision returned, and the messenger stepped back from me. I felt different. I felt full of life, and like every breath could keep me alive forever. I also realized I took fewer breaths. I looked down at myself, and I still looked the same, but I felt so different. She told me my name was now a title, and this would be passed to the future child that inherited my gift. The messenger's last words were, "Choose well," and in a flash of light, she was gone. It took me a while to gain my senses to act. When I did, I went to the farms to look for Eunyalus, and to tell him what had happened. When I found him, he looked different too, and I guessed he had been given a gift as well. When he heard me coming, he put his hand up as if to say wait, so I waited. After a while, he got up from the floor near the tree he was sitting at. He looked at me, and when he did, I saw the changes. He said I had changes too, and took me to see my reflection in a bucket of water. I was overjoyed to see the changes, and asked how Eunyalus had known he looked different. He said a friend in the forest had told him. Eunyalus interrupted. I'd better take it from here, Phenon. Phenon smiled and nodded, clearly happy to have been able to tell his part of the story. No doubt you have many questions, Eunyalus said. Tregatu moved to lean against the tree, facing Eunyalus. He had been curious to see if Eunyalus' eyes were a different colour, but hadn't wanted to interrupt Phenon. To his slight annoyance, Eunyalus had his eyes closed as he continued talking. Many of your questions will have been answered, but once I've finished, we can try to answer any others. However, I do feel some questions won't have answers, or answers that don't make sense to us. Eunyalus suddenly opened his eyes. Tregatu couldn't help but be captivated. Staring up at him were deep green eyes. He began to wonder about his own again. This is what happened to me when I received my gift, Eunyalus continued. I was out on a long walk in the forest and found a peaceful, solitary area to listen to the animals and my thoughts. I sat with my back against a tree and closed my eyes to meditate. After about an hour, I heard a woman's voice call my name. After looking around and not seeing anyone, I heard another sound. It was the neighing of a horse. It was peculiar to hear one of my favourite animals in the forest, as they usually stay in the open fields. I stood up and began to walk in the direction of the noise, while trying to understand where the woman's voice could have come from. After 10 minutes, I could hear the horse was close. I stepped from behind the tree, and there it was. It was very different to a normal horse. It was the whitest horse I had ever seen, almost glowing as the sun hit it. It looked at me as I came out from behind the tree, and it had the same coloured eyes as the girl Phenon saw. The horse also had a tail that was dark yellow, like the bracelet of the girl, and the mane was the same colours as the stones. I raised my hands, and in a calm voice I asked what it was doing out here. Through my calm tone, I hoped it would understand I wasn't a threat. It took a few steps back. I told it not to be afraid, and that I would not hurt it. The perplexing thing was that it seemed to understand exactly what I said, and it let out a little neigh and trotted forwards. I also stepped forwards and put my hands out. It came up to me, and I put my hand against its neck. It neighed again, and I said hello, showing it I was a friend. To my surprise, I suddenly felt the horse's thoughts and feelings, and I could understand them. It said it was a messenger from the Creator. I dropped to my knees, and I could still hear its thoughts. The messenger told me it had a question for me, and it asked me this riddle. What can be harder than any substance, or like its lettering, as easy as 3 add 3? There is always more than one, but it is only one word. It can separate the beast from the man, and it is required for the answer to this question. Still kneeling in the forest, I thought long and hard. I took the first line and thought about the wording. From the fact it said, harder than any substance, I could tell it meant it wasn't a physical thing. I concluded it must be an emotion, or subject, or something similar to this. I then asked for the second line to be repeated. This line implied that the answer could either be easy, and as the first line said, hard, the phrase, its lettering as easy as 3 add 3, was simple, as it meant the answer had 6 letters. The following line was confusing. After trying to figure it out, I moved on to the next. It can separate the beast from the man, implied it can, and it cannot separate the beast from the man. I tried to decide whether this meant animals from humans, or something different. I thought of how I have seen some humans act like animals at times. I thought this must be what it meant, because of the wording, the beast, from the man, and not beast from man, or animal from man. The implies a single entity, and not separate entities. The last line was difficult. I thought long and hard about this line, and as I was about to go back to line 3, I realized I couldn't decide on the answer. I had 2 answers I thought it could be, you see. I couldn't decide. I thought about the word decide, and this gave me the answer. The first answer I thought it could be was riddle. A riddle could be easy or hard, and it had 6 letters. Knowing the answer could separate the beast from the man through intelligence, and the last line did not fit. It is required for the answer to this question. If it had been worded, It is the answer to this question. I would have said riddle, but my other option worked so much better. This is because the word required implied an action that had to be made. This was all underlined by the fact I had two options. I had to pick one, and this was the moment of enlightenment. I had to make a choice. I went through each line again, and my answer made sense. I told the messenger the answer must be choice. The horse-like messenger said my intelligence was impressive, and such a quality could make me a great leader. It said I was going to be offered a gift, and explained this to me. After all the worlds had been shown to me, I selected the unicorn. It was white, like the messenger I saw, but it had a straight dark yellow horn that came from its head, about 2 hands in length. I chose the unicorn because it could talk to any living creature the way the messenger spoke to me, and it had great intelligence. It talked to both animals and humans, and passed wisdom and intelligence between both, allowing them to live in harmony. I want this for the people and the animals here. I believe animals can teach us a lot, and we can work together to bring about greater harmony and peace. The messenger explained I could talk to nature with my mind, when my eyes were closed and I was focused, but said I would still have to talk to humans. I was also told I would have greater intelligence and knowledge of the world around me. I was asked if this was still the gift I wanted. I said it was. I was told to stand, and the messenger horse put its head against mine, so we were cheek to cheek. There was a flash of light. All thought began to empty, and I felt as if there was an infinite space in my mind. The feeling then changed. I felt as if something moved and grew inside my head. It continued to grow and spread down the back of my neck, along my spine, and to my arms and legs. It stretched along the floor from my feet. I felt like part of me was growing and stretching along the earth. As this happened, I could feel and hear all the creatures around me. I could hear the insects, the birds, and the plants. It was like I could sense all life around me. Then, as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. All disappeared, and it was just my own thoughts in my head. I regained my sight, and the white horse still stood in front of me, with its 7-colored mane and dark yellow tail. The final thoughts and feelings translated into the words, "Choose well," and in a flash the messenger was gone. I sat on the ground and thought about what happened. After I cleared my mind, closed my eyes, and focused on listening. At first there was nothing. Then I could hear, or rather sense, the insects in the grass around me. They didn't speak the way we do. It was in my mind like the messenger, but theirs were fainter thoughts and feelings. It was very chaotic, and I struggled to separate one creature from another. It's still very hard, and even harder to describe what it's like. After listening for a while, I both heard and felt something very powerful that overshadowed all the other noise and feelings. My internal sight focused on where this came from, and it was coming from the tree nearest to me. I focused all my attention on it, and words cannot describe the feelings of such a being. I was aware that I was trying to communicate, and I felt surprise and curiosity come from it. It tried to push me out with negative feelings, so I tried to give it positive feelings to show I wasn't a threat, and this was very hard. After a few minutes, it seemed to understand, sending positive feelings back. In these feelings, I felt wisdom of things past, and the transfer of knowledge took place. I understood more of how life functioned and how much life there was around me. I decided to listen to more creatures around me, discovering that some had very little ability to communicate or feel, and others had greater abilities. Some were not even aware I was trying to communicate with them. A lot of time went by, and I wanted to stay there forever, but I knew it was time to leave. As I left, I saw a deer about 10 meters away. I closed my eyes and reached out to it. When I connected with it, I could hear very clear thoughts and emotions. It had seen me and was scared. I told it not to be frightened, and I was a friend. It was greatly intrigued. I told it again not to worry, and that I wasn't going to hurt it. In its thoughts, it asked how this was possible. I told him a messenger had come and given me a gift from the Creator. The deer then walked towards me. I stayed where I was, and once again I told it not to worry, and I put out my hand. It jumped up to me, and I felt it lick my hand. I smiled, and the deer told me the rest of his family wasn't going to believe this, I told him that I was the only one that could communicate with him, and to still be wary of my kind. The deer understood. It said it knew I was different from the moment it saw me. I asked what it meant. It said my eyes and hair were like no other human. I was curious, and it described what I looked like. I told him I had to go, and I would be in the forest often, and to keep a lookout for me. I opened my eyes, and it bounded off, looking very pleased with itself. I could tell it was excited by the news it was going to tell others of its kind. I smiled to myself and continued to walk in the direction of the nation. On the journey, my mind felt faster, and I remembered things with ease, like I could reach into it and pull out anything I had seen before. I could see it clearly in my mind, as if I was seeing it in front of me. I finally arrived here and went to a farm to see my own reflection, and enjoyed seeing the changes. I then sat and practiced my gift with the tree. That is when Finon found me. We talked about what happened, trying to answer some of our questions, and wondered what might have happened to you. Finally, we decided to tell people the little we could. We also spent a long time waiting to see you, so we could see if you had received a gift from the Creator too. We guessed that if we had received one, you would be honored with one too. It is clear we guessed right. We have met here from time to time, and we're talking about wanting you here with us. It's good to have you back. There's a lot to discuss, isn't there? Dragatu had listened patiently and been thinking about the questions he had. Yes, there's a lot to talk about. But before we go any further, do I have different eyes? Yes, you do, Eunyalus replied. Finon let Dragatu see for himself. Finon grabbed Dragatu's arm again. We'll be back shortly, Finon called to Eunyalus, who shut his eyes again. After a quick walk, they arrived at a farm. Dragatu looked into a barrel full of water, and there, staring back, were two dark red eyes. Dragatu did a double take, staring with amazement at his whole face. He smiled with amusement. He loved the way he looked, with the 3 scar lines down his face and the red eyes. They made him look strong, and it certainly gave him a powerful presence. Dragatu finally pulled himself away from his reflection and walked back to the tree with Finon, leaning against it once more as Eunyalus continued their conversation. I'm glad we could answer that question for you. I think now would be a good time to hear about your encounter. Is that okay? Dragatu agreed. Eunyalus sat listening with his eyes closed, and Finon sat next to him, but looked up at Dragatu expectantly. Once Finon was settled, Dragatu explained what had happened. As he did, he explained the reasons for choosing the gift, but left out that he had to see to burn an object, and that it took energy. Once he finished, Finon couldn't hold back his excitement any longer. Go on then, let's see your gift in action. He bounced to his feet, moving to break a branch off the tree. No, Eunyalus shouted, eyes snapping open. He pointed to a dead branch that had already fallen off. Finon apologized and brought the branch over to Dragatu and waited. Dragatu looked at it and let out a quick burst of fire. The branch ignited, and Finon laughed with amazement, but then sat down, looking dismayed, chin in his hand. What's wrong? Dragatu asked. I haven't used my gift yet. I'm too anxious, Finon replied. Dragatu didn't say anything. In one quick motion, he drew a knife and cut the palm of his hand. Eunyalus looked at him with a combination of disapproval and agreement, as if he wished Dragatu hadn't done it, but knew it was the best thing for Finon. It will be okay. Go ahead, Dragatu said, excited to see if Finon could actually heal him. Finon stood up and took a deep breath. He put both hands around Dragatu's cut and shut his eyes, his face screwing up with concentration. Finon suddenly yelped and tore his hands away. Dragatu looked at his hand in bewilderment, held it up and flexed it. It was whole once more. He looked at Finon and was about to laugh and tell him he was impressed, but saw a tear fall down Finon's eye. Are you alright? Eunyalus asked, motioning to get up from the floor. I'm fine, Finon protested. Eunyalus let himself drop the small gap to the ground. I'm just not used to pain, Finon said. It is a great gift, with equally great consequences, Eunyalus said. It will get easier with time, Dragatu said. Pain will always be pain, but it's something you can block out if you work hard at it. Finon put on a brave face and nodded. We have made a lot of progress already, Eunyalus said. This is good. There are still questions we need to discuss. I'll try to answer some, if that's okay. Go for it, Dragatu replied. Thank you, Inanna said. A lot of this is for you, Dragatu. Phinon and I have already had a chance to discuss some of these questions. It will be good to get your opinion. Firstly, I think the changes in our eyes are linked to our gifts, like mine being green and my gift nature, Phenon's being orange like the flying bird that could heal, and Dragatu's linking to his fire gift. All the changes in appearance seem to relate to our gifts. I think this is so we can be seen as different and unique. This will give us credibility, and therefore we can lead and help the people. Do you agree, Dragatu? Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Good, Inanna affirmed. For other questions, it's probably best to go back to the start. And that's the woman's voice. I believe it was the creators. There's no way of knowing for sure, so I haven't given it too much thought. Is there anything you wanted to say about it, Dragatu? I agree it was probably the creator. But you're right, there's no way to know for sure. Okay, we'll move on. Each messenger was different, and Phinon and I think this was because it's what we would be comfortable seeing. Again, we cannot know, but it too makes sense, doesn't it? Dragatu nodded. Do you have any questions, Dragatu? He had wanted to find out why it was okay to talk to his brothers. It was obvious now, so skipped to his next question. What about the colours of the messenger's eyes and items? Honestly, I don't know, Inanna replied. Our eyes are one of those colours, but I don't know what it means. Any ideas are speculation, and that's a dangerous path. Dragatu had hoped for more, but kept quiet. Do you have any more questions? Inanna asked. Dragatu shook his head. If you ever have any more questions in the future, we should talk about them. Together we can try to understand this experience and our purpose better. This leads to the last question I want to discuss with you. How are we going to fulfill our purpose? And what are we actually going to do to help the people? We have to show the people how they can help each other, through us helping them. I know this is going to be difficult as we are very different, but I think we were chosen for this reason. With the three of us together, we'll be able to understand all the people, and not just some. I think we should spend time exploring our gifts and use them around people so they can come to terms with our changes. As we do this, we can think of ways to help the people. We can meet again soon to discuss our ideas. Does that sound good? Dragatu nodded and saw Phinon do the same. He was still struggling to understand how his brothers would ever gain the confidence to lead, but he did his best to hide his feelings. I'm going to go to the forest to do some more communing, Inanna said. Then I'm going to go see Tercia and Mother. I'm going to see Mother now, and then some friends, Phinon said. I'll come with you, Dragatu said. I want to see Honrus, Rion, Linur, and a few others. I'll then be away for a few days with Freta and Johannes. Okay, Inanna said. We'll meet again in a few days. With that, Dragatu and Phinon walked home together. Once home, Dragatu shared his story with Hilana and those he chose. He then wrote what he could about his brothers in his journal and left to spend some time with Freta.